Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive. And we're going to be focusing on fear and meditation and this idea of becoming whole.
Right.
What really stood out to me about this particular excerpt is it's kind of this blend of like philosophical and spiritual insights.
Yeah, you're right. It's a really unique perspective.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that really grabbed my attention was how this excerpt tackles fear.
Yeah.
You know, it's not just about being afraid of specific things,
Right.
but more about how fear itself can keep us from really living a full life.
Yeah, that really struck me too. And you know, it uses this analogy that I found myself thinking about for a while afterwards.
Yeah.
It says the measure part stands in control and the man part is only allowed to move. That movement becomes false.
Wow. What do you make of that?
Well, I think it's kind of saying like our true selves, like the man part, wants to experience life, you know, fully and express itself freely.
Yeah.
But then there's this other part, the measure part.
Yeah.
That's constantly calculating risks and, you know, holding us back.
It's keeping us in check.
Making sure we don't step out of line.
Yeah.
And so as a result, our actions, our movements become restricted.
Yes.
Almost inauthentic.
Yeah. I think it's like we're not fully showing up as ourselves.
It's like we're living life on autopilot, you know?
Right.
Always playing it safe, never really taking that leap of faith.
Have you ever felt that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, that kind of internal conflict, that pull between wanting to let go and this like measuring part keeping you tethered.
Oh, I think that's something we all grapple with.
Yeah.
To some extent, for sure.
Yeah. And what I thought was really fascinating is that you know, the excerpt suggests this constant inner battle, this self-contradiction is incredibly draining. That's right.
It's like we're wasting energy on fighting ourselves.
Yeah.
Instead of, you know, using it to actually pursue what matters to us.
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like that saying, you know, I'm my own worst enemy. But what if instead of letting fear control us, we actually faced it head on?
Right.
Like the excerpt seems to suggest that's the path to true freedom.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's, I mean, it's definitely not about becoming fearless. Right?
Yeah, you're right.
It's about developing a different relationship with fear.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it.
The excerpt uses this term inner hell,
right?
Which might sound a little dramatic.
Yeah.
But I think it's pointing to this idea that we need to confront those deepest fears, experience them fully, and then realize that we can come back from them.
It's not about, you know, avoiding discomfort or trying to pretend like those fears don't exist.
It's about like really diving into them, getting to know them, and ultimately maybe even befriending them.
Exactly. It's like going on a descent into your own personal underworld and emerging on the other side. Stronger and more resilient.
Yeah, and what it suggests is like once you face that inner hell and you return, fear kind of loses its grip.
Loses its power over you.
Yeah, that's a powerful image.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, the idea of like deliberately facing my deepest fears is a little intimidating.
It can be. Yeah.
Yeah. So how does someone even begin to do that?
Right.
Is that where meditation comes in?
That's a great question, and it leads us to another fascinating aspect of this excerpt, the role of meditation.
Okay.
But before we jump into that, I think it's important to clarify how this excerpt views meditation.
Okay.
Because it's not what you might typically expect.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this.
Unconventional view of meditation.
So this excerpt presents meditation as a tool for addressing what it calls this deep anguish and madness within us.
Right.
But it's not saying that meditation is some kind of escape from reality or a way to transcend our problems.
So it's not about sitting on a mountaintop and detaching from the world.
Not at all. In fact, the excerpt even says, people come to me and they ask me when you do meditate. Never. I don't meditate. There is no need.
That's pretty provocative.
It's a very provocative statement.
Yeah. It seems counterintuitive to say there's no need for meditation.
Yeah.
So can you unpack that a little?
Sure.
What does that mean in the context of this excerpt?
Well, it gets to the heart of what this excerpt is ultimately aiming for, a state of wholeness and health.
Right.
Think of it this way. Meditation is like medicine.
Okay.
It's a tool to help us heal, to become more integrated, to find inner peace. But just like you wouldn't keep taking medicine once you're healthy.
Right.
The need for formal meditation might diminish as we cultivate a deeper sense of well-being.
That makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
But, I imagine for most of us, it's a journey to get to that point where we no longer feel the need to meditate. And it probably looks different for everyone, too.
Exactly. And this excerpt recognizes that it's not about following a rigid set of rules or achieving some idealized state of enlightenment.
Right.
It's about using the tools available to us, including meditation, to become more aware of what's happening inside us and to cultivate a more harmonious relationship with ourselves.
Yeah, that's really resonating with me. It's like this excerpt is encouraging us to become our own inner alchemists.
Beautiful,
right? Transforming those base metals of fear and suffering into something more precious.
Yes.
Freedom and wholeness.
That's a beautiful way to put it. And, there's another intriguing aspect to this idea of meditation as medicine.
Okay.
The excerpt suggests that sometimes we might actually resist healing.
Wow, that's a thought-provoking idea.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
What do you mean by that?
Well, think about it. We can become so used to our own patterns of suffering, our anxieties, or insecurities that they become almost comfortable, familiar.
Right.
It's like that old saying, better the devil you know than the devil you don't.
Yeah, I could definitely relate to that.
Yeah.
It's almost like those negative thoughts become a part of our identity. And even though they cause us pain, we're afraid to let them go.
Right, we cling to them.
Yeah.
The excerpt uses this really vivid analogy.
Okay.
Imagine someone who's lived their whole life with a headache.
Okay.
If that headache suddenly disappeared, they might feel like something's missing.
Wow. Yeah.
Like they've lost a part of themselves.
That's wild. Yeah.
It's a strange paradox, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
We crave healing, yet we cling to our familiar miseries.
Right.
So what does this have to do with meditation?
Yeah. Yeah. How does that tie in?
Well, meditation in this context can be seen as a practice of letting go.
Okay.
It's about becoming aware of those patterns of thought and behavior that are causing us suffering and gently releasing them.
Okay.
It's about creating space for something new to emerge.
I like that. It's not about forcefully pushing away those difficult emotions, but rather acknowledging them, accepting them, and then allowing them to pass through us.
Exactly. And as we practice this letting go, as we become more comfortable with the ebb and flow of life, the need for formal meditation might naturally diminish.
Okay.
It's not about achieving a state of perpetual bliss or denying the realities of human experience.
It's more about developing a sense of inner resilience.
That's it.
Right. An ability to kind of navigate the ups and downs of life.
Yeah.
With more grace.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about becoming more whole, more integrated, more fully ourselves.
I like that.
And that brings us to another key theme in this excerpt, the question of why.
Okay, I'm all ears. What's so important about this question of why?
Well, the excerpt specifically addresses the question, why meditate?
Okay.
And what's so interesting is that it doesn't offer a straightforward answer.
Right.
Instead, it suggests that the very act of asking that question might be a sign of a troubled mind.
Wait, so asking why meditate is a problem?
It's not that the question itself is a problem, but more about the underlying state of mind that's giving rise to the question.
Okay.
The excerpt seems to be saying that when we're caught up in anxiety, fear, or a desire to escape suffering, we're constantly searching for answers for a way out.
So it's like we're looking for that quick fix.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And what the excerpt seems to be pointing towards is a different way of being a state of acceptance.
Okay.
Where those questions cease to arise because there's a fundamental sense of peace and contentment.
That's a beautiful idea. But it also seems incredibly challenging.
It is challenging, absolutely. But the excerpt offers us a glimmer of hope.
Okay.
It suggests that as we cultivate inner stillness, as we practice letting go of our fears and attachments, those questions naturally start to fade away.
Okay.
It's like the leaves falling from a tree in autumn.
So it's not about finding the right answer to the question, why meditate? But rather about creating the conditions within ourselves where that question no longer needs to be asked.
You got it. It's about shifting our focus from seeking answers outside of ourselves to cultivating a deeper understanding from within.
This is really making me think about my own relationship with questioning.
Yeah.
I'm definitely someone who likes to analyze and overthink things. But maybe, as this excerpt suggests, true peace comes from letting go of that need to constantly question and explain everything.
It's a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah, it is.
And it leads us to another key insight from this excerpt.
Okay.
This idea that the ultimate answers aren't found in words or explanations, but in lived experience.
Okay. I'm really intrigued by this idea of lived experience.
Yeah.
What does that mean in the context of this excerpt?
It's about moving beyond the realm of concepts and theories and into the messy, unpredictable, but ultimately fulfilling reality of being alive.
Yeah.
It's about embracing the full spectrum of human experience,
right?
The joy, the sorrow, the challenges, the triumphs, and allowing it to shape us, to teach us, to transform us.
It's like saying that the real wisdom isn't found in books or podcasts, but in the way we show up in the world, in our relationships, in our work, in our everyday lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this leads us to a really important question.
Okay.
What does it mean to truly live?
Right.
What does it mean to fully embrace this lived experience that the excerpt is talking about?
Yeah, that's a great question.
That's what we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready to go deeper.
Awesome. So you were asking about what it means to truly live. It's such a fundamental question.
Yeah.
But I think one that we often overlook in the busyness of everyday life.
Yeah. It's so easy to get caught up in the routine of the to-do lists.
Exactly.
In the expectations of others and lose sight of what really matters.
And this excerpt reminds us that true living isn't about checking things off a list or achieving some external measure of success. It's about engaging fully with our experience, embracing both the light and the shadow, and allowing it to shape us into the people we're meant to be.
I love that.
Yeah.
But I have to admit, the idea of embracing the shadow can be a bit intimidating.
I understand.
What does that even look like in practice?
Well, if you recall, earlier we were talking about that passage where the excerpt describes the man part being held back by the measure part.
Right.
And how that restriction leads to inauthenticity.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it said about the consequences of that inner conflict?
Yeah, it said something like, the measure part stands in control and the man part is only allowed to move.
Yeah.
That movement becomes false.
Right. And later on, it talks about how confronting our deepest fears, even going to that inner hell and returning, can lead to a profound sense of liberation.
Okay.
It says you will never be afraid again. And once you have moved to the very hell, to the very madness, and you come back again for the first time, you are in control, never before.
So are you suggesting that embracing the shadow is about facing those fears?
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging that we're not perfect.
Right.
That we have flaws and vulnerabilities, and that those imperfections are actually part of what makes us unique and whole.
It's like instead of trying to present this polished, perfect version of ourselves to the world, we're allowing ourselves to be seen in our totality with all our messy complexities.
And the excerpt suggests that by doing so, we actually become more free.
Okay.
We no longer have to expend energy on hiding or suppressing those parts of ourselves.
You can finally step into our authenticity.
But I imagine that takes a lot of courage. It
does,
doesn't it? To really own our shadow.
Right.
To embrace those parts of ourselves that we might not be proud of.
What are we really afraid of?
That's a great question.
I think it's often the judgment of others.
Right.
The fear of not being loved or accepted. If we show our true selves.
And the excerpt challenges us to question those fears. It asks us to consider what we might gain by letting go of those self-imposed limitations and stepping into our authenticity.
And what does it suggest we might find on the other side of that letting go?
Remember that passage where it talks about experiencing a glimpse of the real? It says, the real goal will allow you to have a glimpse of the real. That glimpse will become the foundation. You will never be afraid again.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful. It's almost like by embracing our shadow, by facing our fears and acknowledging our imperfections, we open ourselves up to a deeper level of reality.
Exactly.
A more authentic way of being.
And that authenticity, that sense of being fully aligned with ourselves becomes the foundation for a life. that's no longer ruled by fear.
That's such a beautiful and inspiring message.
It is.
But I have to be honest.
Yeah.
I'm still struggling a bit with the practical side of this.
Okay.
How do we actually start embracing our shadow?
Right.
Does meditation play a role?
Yes, absolutely, in that process.
Okay.
Meditation, as this excerpt presents, it can be an incredibly powerful tool for cultivating self-awareness and compassion.
Right.
It allows us to create space between our thoughts and emotions, to observe them without judgment, and to start recognizing those patterns that might be keeping us stuck.
So it's not about using meditation to force ourselves to be more positive or to suppress those negative thoughts and feelings.
Right.
It's more about creating a space where we can simply observe them.
You got it.
Okay.
And that's where the real transformation begins.
Yeah.
When we can acknowledge those parts of ourselves that we might normally try to hide or deny, we can start to integrate them into a more holistic sense of self.
It's like those shadow parts are actually holding valuable information, insights that can help us grow and evolve.
And meditation can help us access that wisdom.
Right.
It's like shining a light into the dark corners of our being and discovering that there's nothing to be afraid of.
This is really making me think about how I approach personal growth.
Right.
I often focus on trying to fix what I perceive as my flaws.
Right.
But maybe a more compassionate approach is to simply acknowledge them, accept them, and see how they can actually serve me.
That's a beautiful insight.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the power of self-compassion.
Right.
Which is another key element in this whole process of embracing our shadow.
Right.
It's about treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer to a dear friend.
Because let's face it, we're often our own harshest critics. We judge ourselves, we compare ourselves to others, and we beat ourselves up for not being good enough.
And that inner critic can be incredibly destructive. It keeps us stuck in cycles of shame and self-doubt.
But when we cultivate self-compassion,
we
create a space for healing and growth.
So how can we actually practice self-compassion?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Especially when we're struggling with those shadow parts of ourselves. Well, one way is to start noticing that inner critic, that voice that's constantly putting us down.
Right.
Once we become aware of it, we can start to challenge its messages.
It's like saying, hey, inner critic, I hear you.
Exactly.
But I'm not buying what you're selling today.
And then we can offer ourselves a more compassionate message.
Yeah.
Something like, it's okay to feel this way. Everyone makes mistakes. I'm still worthy of love and belonging.
That's so powerful.
It is.
It's like we're learning to be our own best friend, our own cheerleader.
And that's a key element in this whole process of embracing our shadow and living a more authentic life. It's about recognizing that we're all perfectly imperfect.
I like that.
And that our imperfections are actually part of what makes us beautiful and unique.
I love that message.
Yeah.
It's so liberating to think that we don't have to strive for perfection.
Right.
That we can just be ourselves, flaws and all.
And you know, this ties back to that final message from the excerpt, the one that really struck a chord with you. Man has nothing to lose except his chains, except his slavery, except his bondage, except his misery.
Yeah, that line really resonated with me.
It's a powerful one.
It's like it's saying that the only things holding us back are the beliefs, the fears, the patterns of behavior that are causing us suffering.
And when we can let go of those chains, when we can embrace our shadow and step into our authenticity, we open ourselves up to a whole new level of freedom and joy.
It's like we're finally free to live the life we were meant to live, a life that's aligned with our values, our passions, and our deepest desires.
And what's so beautiful about this excerpt is that it doesn't offer a prescriptive path to this freedom. It doesn't give us a set of rules to follow or a specific destination to reach.
It's more like an invitation to embark
on
our own unique journey of self-discovery.
And that journey might involve facing our fears, embracing our shadow, cultivating self-compassion, and learning to listen to the wisdom of our lived experience.
It's a lifelong process.
It is.
But one that's ultimately worth the effort.
Absolutely. And who knows what we might discover along the way.
That's the beauty of it all.
That's the exciting part.
This has been such a rich and thought-provoking conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like we've only just scratched the surface
I agree.
of what this excerpt has to offer.
Yeah, there's so much more to explore.
But I think we've touched on some of the most important themes.
Absolutely.
And I hope it's given you some new perspectives to consider.
I hope so.
And I'm curious to hear what our listeners are thinking about all of this. What are their experiences with fear, with meditation,
with embracing their shadow?
With embracing their shadow.
Yeah.
What resonates with them?
Yeah, what challenges them?
What challenges them? We'd love to hear their thoughts. You know, as we go into this final part of the excerpt from the new Alchemy 33, the MP3, I'm struck by how much ground we've covered.
Right. It's been a lot.
I've talked about fear.
Yeah.
Meditation.
Embracing the shadow.
Embracing our shadow. Even the idea of
resisting healing.
It's been quite a journey.
Yeah, it has.
And through it all, I think there's this underlying current of seeking true freedom.
Yes.
Not just external freedom, but a deeper, more internal liberation.
That's exactly it. And this final part really brings that theme home, especially with that powerful statement.
Right.
Man has nothing to lose except his chains, except his slavery, except his bondage, except his misery.
Chills. Yeah, every time.
It's so simple, yet so profound.
Yeah.
What do you think it's getting at?
Yeah. What do you think the excerpt is getting at with those words?
Well, if we think back to everything we've discussed, it seems like those chains, that bondage, are all the things we've been talking about. Yep. The fear that holds us back, the clinging to misery, the constant questioning, the need to control everything.
You're hitting on all the key points. It's like we create our own prisons.
Yeah, we do.
With these self-imposed limitations.
With these self-imposed limitations, exactly.
And the excerpt is inviting us to break free, to recognize that true freedom.
To recognize that true freedom.
To recognize that true freedom.
Comes from within.
It does.
But how do we actually do that?
That's the question, isn't it?
Yeah, how do we break free from those chains?
It's not a simple answer.
Right.
But the excerpt gives us some clues.
Okay.
Remember that passage about experiencing a glimpse of the real? It says, the real goal will allow you to have a glimpse of the real. That glimpse will become the foundation. You will never be afraid again.
Yes, that's one of the
It's a good one.
most powerful lines in the whole excerpt.
Right.
But what does it mean to experience the real?
I think it's about connecting with something deeper than our thoughts, our fears, our conditioned beliefs.
Right.
It's about tapping into
a more authentic way of being.
Right.
A state of presence and awareness.
Yeah.
Where we're no longer defined by those limitations.
So it's not about achieving some kind of external goal.
It's not about the destination.
Or reaching a specific destination.
It's about the journey.
It's more about cultivating a certain way of being in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the excerpt suggests that this shift in perspective, this glimpse of the real, can be profoundly liberating.
Right.
It can break the chains of fear and open us up to a whole new level of freedom.
But if it's not about external goals, how do we actually cultivate
That's the big question.
this way of being?
Yeah.
Is it through meditation?
I think that's
through embracing our shadow.
All of those things and more.
Through facing our fears.
It's about becoming more conscious, more aware of our thoughts, our emotions, our patterns of behavior. It's about learning to observe ourselves with compassion and curiosity without judgment.
It sounds like a lot of inner work.
It is.
Yeah.
But the excerpt reminds us that it's worth the effort.
Right.
Because what we're ultimately seeking is something far greater than temporary pleasure or fleeting happiness.
We're seeking something more.
We're seeking a deep and lasting sense of fulfillment.
Right.
A freedom that can't be taken away by external circumstances.
And that freedom, as this excerpt suggests, comes from within.
It does.
It's about realizing that we're not our thoughts.
We're not our thoughts.
We're not our fears.
Or our limitations.
Or our limitations.
Right.
We're something much greater.
Yeah.
Something more expansive.
Yes.
Something that's capable of experiencing boundless joy and unconditional love.
You've captured it perfectly.
Yeah. And, you know, this whole conversation has made me think about how we often get caught up in seeking happiness outside of ourselves.
Right.
In possessions.
In possessions,
Achievements. Relationships.
You know, it's so easy to fall into that trap.
It is.
To believe that if we just get that next promotion,
Right.
Find that perfect partner, buy that dream house.
Yeah.
Then we'll finally be happy.
But what this excerpt reminds us is that true happiness, true freedom is an inside job.
Yes.
It's about cultivating a sense of inner peace and contentment that's not dependent on external circumstances.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
And it's one that I think we all need to hear.
We all need to hear it, yeah.
Especially in today's world.
Especially in today's world.
Where we're constantly bombarded with messages about what we should have, what we should achieve.
What we should achieve, yeah.
And who we should be.
You're right. It's easy to lose sight of what truly matters.
In all the noise and distractions. But this excerpt invites us to pause to reflect.
Yeah.
To turn our attention inward.
Right.
And to reconnect with that deeper part of ourselves.
Yeah.
That already knows the way.
And maybe, just maybe, as we embark on this journey of inner exploration, we'll discover that the chains we thought were holding us back were actually illusions all along.
What a beautiful thought to end on. Yeah. And, you know, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to thank you for your insightful questions.
Oh, thank you.
And thoughtful reflections.
The pleasure was all mine.
Well, it's been a joy exploring these ideas with you.
Absolutely.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this journey.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
We hope this conversation has sparked some new insights and inspired you to continue exploring the depths of your own being. Until next time, keep seeking, keep questioning, and keep embracing the beautiful mystery of life.
Beautifully said. I love that.
Please like, share, and subscribe.